Hello, everyone. I'm Natasha Fatah, and you're watching CBC News Network. We've got breaking and heartbreaking news leading this hour. The Women's Rugby World Cup Finals match has just ended, and England beat Canada 33-13. The Canadians did secure the first try of the game thanks to Toronto's Asia Hogan-Rochester. But England quickly bounced back and took the lead. This was Canada's first World Cup final in over 10 years, and they played it in front of a record-setting crowd of 82,000 fans at the stadium in London. And among those fans cheering on the Canadians, Prime Minister Mark Carney. Let's turn to CBC's Julia Chapman, who's also at the stadium, taking in not only the game, but the emotion surrounding it. Julia, it's not the result Canadians were hoping for, but a valiant effort nonetheless.
It certainly was, Natasha. They came very close to winning Canada's first Women's World Cup rugby trophy, but it wasn't to be for the team. They started well, as you said. There was a try early on, but they very quickly lost the momentum to England's Red Roses, who were certainly the dominant force on the pitch throughout. But it has been a really incredible journey for Canada's team. Over the course of this tournament, they have proved that they are a force to be reckoned with. They cleanly got through the pool stage, the quarterfinal and the semi-final with that decisive win over New Zealand. But it could be that that was where all their energy was spent and they didn't quite have it in them to have one final win. But undoubtedly, this has been a really important tournament for women's rugby more broadly. There are more and more fans watching the sport around the world, in Canada and elsewhere. Here in Twickenham Stadium, the stadium was almost completely full. More than 81,000 people were watching. That's the second highest number of attendance of any World Rugby match ever, men's or women's. It's certainly the highest for the women, so it has garnered a lot of attention. And there has certainly been progress under coach Kevin Rouet for Canada's team, and some really impressive players as well. We're still waiting to hear whether forward Sophie de Goede will be named World Rugby Player of the Year for the women. That's due to be announced very shortly. But she and her other teammates did put in a valiant effort throughout. Certainly fans will be disappointed that they couldn't bring it home, but it has been a really amazing journey for Canada's women.
CBC's Julia Chapman at the Women's Rugby World Cup final in London. Thank you, Julia. Okay, let's keep the conversation going with Colette Macaulay. She's a former player and former assistant coach on the women's rugby team, and she's joining us now from Guelph, Ontario. Colette, I'm sorry.
I know it's so heartbreaking, but what you guys said leading up to this interview is so important. It's about growing the game. It's about getting more young girls on the pitch for every nation, and the exposure that we've had as Canadians and across the world for women's sports and rugby in particular is so exceptional. So it is heartbreaking. We knew we had to be clinical and on our best game to be able to beat England at this stage. But it doesn't take away everything that they have done leading up to this, all the hard work. It doesn't take away from their absolute exceptionality. They're just tremendous people. They're a tremendous team under Kevin and his staff. And we are so proud of them as Canadians. I cannot tell you how much pride and how much talk has happened across the nation back here at home. We all wanted to be there for them and be a part of that 81 or 82,000 fans at the stadium to give them a leg up and a boost up. We knew that the crowd was going to be a very much pro Red Roses. So, but we watched here and we were just so proud of what they've accomplished throughout the last 3 years since last World Cup.
And I want to talk to you a bit more about the larger story here, about how so many Canadians have rallied around this team. We don't normally, we're a hockey country, right? And sometimes we're kind of into baseball like we are right now, but I don't often hear us talking about rugby. So we'll get to that in just a moment. But because you have such deep knowledge of the game, and I do not, so tell me what you saw when you were watching that match. Like what did the English get right? Where did we fall behind? What would you have guided them to if you were there coaching them?
It's the little errors, and we saw England force France to make those errors. We saw England to force every other team that they come up against to make those errors. And up until this game, Canada has not made those errors. We've been very, very good in the rucks. Our penalty count, I think, was higher probably this game than the last 2, maybe 3 games put together. So all of those little nuances of the game, we have to be very, very technical in our set piece. We need to have that strong platform to be able to play that fast game that we want to play. So we were on our hind foot a lot. We needed to have our kicking game needed to be on to try to keep it away from Ellie Kildun and the back 3 from England and try to find some space. And we got that a little bit in the second half, but we just weren't accurate enough in our passing and our support and our timing of our support. I think Hannah Botterman turned over three balls in the ruck, and we just can't give up the ball like that. We need possession to play. We're an exciting team when we have possession. Defense is so tiring, and that's exactly what happened. Is we played a lot of defense in that first half, and it's very, very tiring for the athletes.
Now, as you mentioned earlier, England was playing on home turf. They certainly had, I would imagine, the majority of the crowd on side, and we know that makes a difference. But as you also alluded to, there's been this groundswell of support for the Canadian team. And you're a former player, so you're watching it. What are you seeing transform and people's interest in it?
It is so exciting. We came from a pay-to-play model up until, I think it was 2014 was the first World Cup that athletes didn't have to pay to represent their country. So, but even then, we're still been fighting that, even though it's not pay to play, fighting for a little bit of compensation, because these athletes are taking so much time away from their work, school, and then on top of that, losing a lot of wages that they would normally have because they are amateur, right? They're not professional. So just the fight that we have had to continue in Canada, but slowly we're getting that momentum and that, like you said, exposure. People are talking about women's rugby instead of coming home from tour and saying, oh, I didn't know women played rugby. We're actually saying, oh my goodness, we saw you on TSN, CBC, Rugby Pass. There's so many opportunities for people to watch our game now. And I think Magali said it nicely earlier, just at halftime. It's so nice to not be compared to the men's game and just have people watch women's rugby for the beauty of women's rugby. The creativity, the kicking, the physicality, the passing, the athleticism. It's so nice to be able to just have people talk about women's rugby as women's rugby and not any comparison to anything else. It's just very exciting. And this build up towards this World Cup, the social media presence of all the individual athletes, and each one of those athletes at World Cup has a really special story, I can assure you, of how they got there and all the hard work and sacrifices. So all of these stories that keep coming up, I hope it continues. I hope we don't have, after today, this lapse in exposure and lapse in these stories, because they are really they're just extraordinary and unique. And I hope that we can continue the momentum so the women's rugby game continues to grow and we're continuously selling out stadiums. That would be amazing. Okay,
I'm going to annoy you, Colette, because I actually do want to do a comparison with men's hockey, men's rugby, but only in the sense of, because you've talked about pay for play and that these women are losing their wages because they're having to fund themselves. There's been quite a bit of crowdfunding this time. I mean, that's been another part of the story about the local support also coming in financially. But just give us a compare and contrast, if you can, what men's rugby gets versus what women's gets.
Well, historically, men were paid to, again, Rugby Canada is not a wealthy union, so it's not that they were making living wages off of being a rugby player either, but they did get paid for being away on tour. So per game, sometimes it was per game. It depends on what the player agreement. The player agreement has changed and evolved over time. And then it was 7s versus 15s because Own the Podium often carded athletes for 7s. So there was always a little bit of disparity between the 7s and the 15s athletes on how they got paid. So it's always been a conversation and a very difficult one to navigate through. The men, like I said, they would be paid away while they're on tour and then per game. And if there's any winnings, there'd be bonuses. So that's usually how the player agreement is drawn up. And they've always had a way more robust player agreement than the women's. And now I think finally, if my resources are correct, that we finally are on kind of like equal paying and playing ground just this year.
Okay, well, that is good news. And, you know, we're seeing that sort of shift in women's hockey, women's basketball. It's nice to see. But Colette, I have to give you some breaking news. Just coming into our newsroom, even though we're in a bittersweet moment, Canada's Sophie de Goede has just been awarded World Player of the Year. So you tell me about Sophie. What do you think about this choice?
I have tears in my eyes. Talk about resilience. And a lot of these athletes, you know, you hear of the stories of coming back from injury and, you know, missing out on a few opportunities, but just the resilience they show. And she's been with the team, even through injury, even through her recovery. She's gone on tour and helping with the analysis. I have goosebumps. I'm so happy for her. She's such a tremendous young woman. She is. She makes time for the young players everywhere she goes. I mean, my daughter is a huge fan, and she is just a really exceptional person on and off the field. And she is one of the greatest players you've ever seen. Just everything, attack, defense, skill set, lineouts. She kicks. I mean, she just, when you're talking about building your toolbox, when we're coaching young athletes, you know, you got to build your toolbox, you know, hers is pretty full. So for her to be recognized as World Rugby Player of the Year, I'm so happy for her, so happy for, you know, her family. And I think having a Canadian player receive that award is really tremendous and a great story for the team.
Colette Macaulay, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you. Again, not the result Canadians were hoping for, but still a really good moment for the Canadian team. Thank you so much for your time and insights.
Thank you so much. And you know, my only message is the pride that we have as Canadian rugby players and fans across is that this day does not negate anything that they have done. We love them and cherish them wholeheartedly. Thanks so much.
Thank you.